What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Vinyl Den, your channel for record collecting by record collectors. I'm Nick. Today, checking out some of the bigger albums that are getting released this Friday, August 22nd. A little over 300 albums coming out this week. I got 14 on the list for today. There's a bunch of links down below. You got links for the Vinyl Den Facebook group, for the merch page, for the Spotify and Apple Music playlist that I put together every week, and the Patreon page. So make sure you check all that out. Like always, if you enjoyed the episode, make sure you give me a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button down below, and make sure you hit that notification bell so you're notified every time I release new episodes. Like I said in the intro, there's just over 300 albums that are coming out this week, but I'm only going to talk about 14 of them on the show today. If there's something you're looking forward to that I don't have on here, make sure you drop me a comment down below. Let me know what you're looking forward to grabbing. And like always, if you're unable to find these in your local brick and mortar stores, they should all be available online. I'll put links down below in the comment section for them. You can also always go over to the Vinyl Den store on Amazon. There's pre-orders on there, there's new releases, there's deals on records, all sorts of cool stuff to check out. An album that's been heavily bootlegged over the last several years is finally getting an official reissue this week. This is Machina by the Smashing Pumpkins. It was released in 2000. It was their 5th studio album. 25th anniversary release is a black version of this. There's also a red version. I wanted to get the red copy, but I went online to grab a copy of that one. It was like $20 more than the standard black version. Black version you get online for $40, but the website I went to after shipping and all that was like almost $60 for the red version. I typically would prefer to have a colored version of it, but for the price difference, I decided to just go with black. But this is something I've long waited to get reissued. Like I said, it's been heavily bootlegged over the years, but Machina marked the return of the full original lineup to the band. So when the band released Adore, which was the album they released after Melancholy, it was more of this like industrial electronic rock album. Didn't have Jimmy Chamberlin on drums on that one. So this album marked his return to the band. It was also a return to that more guitar-driven rock sound that the band had been known for really up until they released Adore. And Machina originally was intended to be the last album from the band. It was released, I think, in February of 2000, and then later that year they would release part 2 only on the internet. There was like a very limited physical release of that album, which I'm hoping we'll get a standalone release of Machina 2 also. There is a big 8 LP box set if you want to have the full release. I think it includes all the stuff that was on Machina also. It runs like $300 or $400, which even though I love the stuff that's on both those albums, is just way outside of my price range. And this album and part 2 would also mark the very last albums with Darcy on bass. And I've long said that once Darcy left the band, I think a large part of their sound went with her. Smashing Pumpkins has released some good music since she left the band, but I think the consistency just hasn't been there ever since she left. This one I've already got on pre-order. Definitely looking forward to that one this week. Another album that's been long out of print. It's been long overdue to get reissued. It's finally getting reissued this week. This is Greatest Hits Volume 1 and 2 by Billy Joel. Came out back in 1985. So this is a compilation of all of his best-known tracks from 73 to 85. It's going to run you about $33. This is one of the best-selling compilations of all time. Sold over 18 million copies worldwide. So since 1990, this album has only been reissued one time. It was in 2017. It was a 3 LP box set that MoFi released. If you want to go online, it's like over $300 to get that one. So like I said, it's one that's definitely long overdue to get reissued. And even though I've got most of those Billy Joel albums on vinyl, I probably still will grab a copy of this one. I do have a late 90s processing of this one, but it's not in the best shape. I definitely need to get an upgraded version of it. But the strange thing to me is as popular as this album has been over the years, I'm shocked that this is just now getting reissued. A couple of big discography box sets getting released this week. The first one was Oasis, the Complete Studio Albums Collection. So this is a new 8 album, 14 LP box set. There's 2 different versions of this. There's actually a pretty big price difference between the two. So there's a standard black version. It's going to run you about $390. And then there's a gold version. It's going to run you about $440. So it's an extra $50 just to have it on gold vinyl. So what you're getting in this box set is all 7 of the band's studio albums, plus the master plan, which the master plan was a collection of B-sides that they released. When I looked online, it said remastered. So I'm assuming that means it's newly remastered, but I'm not sure if that means now or at some time in the last couple of years. This is all being released to celebrate their 2025 tour. It's one that I consider grabbing, but at that price point, you're paying about $50 per album, which is a little pricey for me. Later this year, if someone's having a sale online, I can get this a little cheaper. Maybe I'll consider grabbing a copy of it then. Like I said, I've got the first couple of albums on vinyl. There's a couple other ones I'd like to have from that collection, but we'll see if I end up grabbing a copy of it eventually. So you got that coming out this week. You've also got Cheap Trick, Complete Epic Albums Collection. So it's a new 13 album, 14 LP box set. So this is all the band's albums from 1977 until 1990, which makes up the most commercially successful period from the band. So this is going to run you about $393. So what you're getting in this box set are all 11 of the band's studio albums from that period. There's also Live at Budokan, which is on 2 LPs, and then Found All the Parts, which is an EP the band released. It's all going to be on clear vinyl. It comes in this really nice deluxe slipcase. Cheap Trick is one of those bands. I don't have any of their stuff on vinyl, but do I really need all these albums on vinyl? They're one of those bands I could probably just do with a greatest hits compilation, but I don't know. Same thing with that Oasis box set. If I find this on sale, down the line at a really good price, maybe I'll eventually end up grabbing a copy of it. I think one of the more intriguing releases that's coming out this week is this John Fogerty Legacy, the CCR Years. So this is going to run you about $28. So basically what this is John was inspired by Taylor Swift. Over the last couple of years, she's been re-recording her music as a way to regain control of her music. Of course, it was all before she bought all of her masters back. But John has been in a fight to gain control of his music since he left CCR. So he was inspired by Taylor to go through and re-record some of the biggest hits from CCR on this album. It's a 2 LP release. It's going to run you about $28. When it comes to these re-recorded albums, for the most part, they're just kind of okay at best. A lot of times they're really not all that good. I think it's kind of what made Taylor's album so special is she was so good at re-recording her music. She got them so close to the originals that in most instances it's really kind of hard to distinguish one versus the other. And like I said, I think this is one of the more intriguing releases this week because I'm really interested to see how he does compared to those older original versions of those songs. I think he's already released 6 or 7 singles off of this album. I haven't listened to any of them yet. I do think it's funny that he did title this one John's version also. It's one I'll definitely stream. I probably will end up grabbing a copy of that one this week also. Then we also got Clapton Chronicles, the best of Eric Clapton. Came out back in 1999. It's a 2 LP release. It's going to be on white with black splatter. It's going to run you about $40. So this is a compilation of tracks from the 80s and 90s, which was this really interesting period for Eric Clapton because there was this transition from this like blues rock sound that he had been known for prior to that to this more like adult contemporary sound. Included in this compilation are studio tracks, there's covers, there's live songs, of course, songs from Unplugged also. There's Layla on there. There are also 2 new tracks that he recorded and released in 1999 on there, which I always found kind of funny when a band releases or an artist releases a greatest hits compilation and then they throw extra tracks on there, which aren't greatest hits, but I think it's just something to kind of help promote the album. There's also the new album from 3 Days Grace coming out this week. This is Alienation. It's the Canadian rock band's 8th studio album. It's going to run you about $22. So this is the band's first album with the original lead singer Adam Gontier since the release Transit of Venus back in 2012. And when Adam left the band, he was replaced by My Darkest Days lead singer Matt Walst. So this is actually going to be the band's first album with 2 lead singers because when Adam rejoined the band, Matt stayed on also. I've never been a big fan of 3 Days Grace. I probably only listened to maybe just a handful of their songs, so it's definitely one I'll stream and check out this week. And you've got a reissue of Traveler by Chris Stapleton coming out this week. Released back in 2015. It was his debut studio album. 10th anniversary release. This is going to be on Coke Bottle Clear vinyl. It's an Amazon exclusive. It's going to run you about $38. So this is the album that introduced the world to Chris's blend of country, blues, and rock. He ended up winning a Grammy for this album. I think he won Album of the Year or the CMAs that year also. The album received widespread critical acclaim and was released during a time where country music was very quickly becoming nothing more than just southern pop music. And this album helped kind of redefine not only what country music was, but where it was going. A couple of great jazz releases coming out this week, both are part of the Craft Recordings Original Jazz Classic series. So these are always mastered by Kevin Gray from the original analog tapes. They're pressed to RTI. They do a great job with these releases. So the first one you got is a self-titled album from Kenny Burrell. So this was released back in 1957. It's running about $42, which I know is a lot, but this is a great jazz album. This is one of 6 albums that Kenny would release in 1957, and actually it was the second self-titled album he would release that year. And even only 25 years old, it was very clear at that time that Kenny was one of the more talented musicians in jazz, and he would go on to become one of the leaders in that genre. But like always, Kenny was joined by a great lineup on this album. He's got Cecil Payne, Tommy Flanagan, Doug Watkins, Elvin Jones. It is a great lineup. Like I said, $42 is a lot, I think, for an album, especially when you compare that to like the Blue Note Classic Series releases, which are like, $28. But you are getting a great sounding album. Comes in a little bit of an upgraded jacket also. I don't think you'd ever go wrong with any of these Original Jazz Classic Series releases. So you got that one coming out. And the second one I'm not all that familiar with. So this is Wheelin' Dealin' from the Prestige All-Stars. Came out back in 1958. So same thing. It's all mastered by Kevin Gray. It's pressed to RTI. This one's going to run you about $39. I think I've only heard one track off of this album before, and I didn't even know it was off of this one until I started going through my notes for releases this week. But because of who's included on this release, I'm expecting this to be a great album. So you got John Coltrane on here, Paul Quinichette, Frank West, Mel Waldron, Doug Watkins, Art Taylor. Like I said, a great lineup. It's one that it's one I definitely need to check out this week. There's also a big Miles Davis box set that's coming out this week. This is Miles 55, the Prestige Recordings. So this is a 3 LP box set. It's going to run you about $100. So this box set takes a deeper dive into what ended up being a pretty pivotal year, not only in Miles' career, but in jazz music. Because 1955 was the year that he would put together his first great quintet. He had John Coltrane in there, Red Garland, Paul Chambers, Philly Joe Jones. They'll go on to record some of the best jazz music over the next several years. There's 16 tracks on here, all of which are newly remastered by Paul Blakemore from the original analog tapes. This is a really important and monumental box set because this was the year where Miles' music would really change jazz music. I spent a lot on records lately, so $100 is probably a lot for me to spend on it, but if I can grab it for a little cheaper than that, maybe I'll grab a copy of it. And then rounding out my list this week are 3 albums from Depeche Mode. The first one is Speak and Spell. Came out back in 1981. It was their debut studio album. It's running about $27. This is the band's first and only album with Vince Clarke as their primary songwriter. And speaking of important releases, this album was kind of widely seen as being one of those big albums that helped push electronic pop music into the mainstream in the early part of the 80s. It's one I have not listened to in probably 30 years. I had this on cassette way back in the day. I picked up a flea market back in the middle part of the 90s. It's definitely one I need to stream and check out this week. And then the second release this week from Depeche Mode is Construction Time Again. Came out back in 1983. It was their third studio album. It's running about $27. So this is the band's first album with Alan Wilder, who would really change the direction musically for the band. It also ended up being a little more of a political album than anything they would do on their first 2 albums. It was really off the strength and success of this album that they would expand their reach outside of England, become the band that everyone would know them to be. I've long seen this as the album where Depeche Mode really found their sound. It's one that if you haven't listened to this one in a long time, I highly recommend checking this one out. And then the last album I got on my list is Black Celebration. Came out back in 1986. It was their 5th studio album. It's also going to run about $27. I think this is easily one of Depeche Mode's best albums. It's also a little heavier, a little darker of an album. It's got a very moody and atmospheric kind of vibe to it. And this is the album that really helps solidify them as one of the biggest and best bands of the middle part of the 80s. Well, that's all I get for you today, guys. Thanks for checking the show out. Make sure you drop me a comment down below. Let me know what you're looking forward to grabbing this week. Going over my list, I think I've only got one thing for sure on pre-order, which is that Smashing Pumpkins album. I probably will end up grabbing that Billy Joel album. Probably will end up grabbing that John Fogerty album. I got a couple more on my maybe list, but let me know what you guys are looking forward to. Like always, if you enjoyed the episode, make sure you give me a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button down below. That's all I got. Until next time, keep on spinning. Peace.